The ship docked with a soft hiss at the Vexteri space station. Mark Reed checked his uniform one last time in the small mirror of his quarters. As the first human to officially meet the Vexteri, he knew that everything about this meeting would be recorded in history books. "Captain, we're ready for you at the airlock," came the voice of his second-in-command through the comm system. "On my way," Mark replied, taking a deep breath. The Vexteri had a fearsome reputation across 3 star systems. Tall, insect-like beings with 6 limbs and glossy exoskeletons, they were known for 2 things: their advanced knowledge of chemistry and their use of poisons as weapons of war. Their ships carried no energy weapons or missiles, only delivery systems for their deadly toxins. Mark walked through the corridor of his ship, nodding at crew members who stood at attention as he passed. Everyone knew what was at stake. Humans had only been exploring space for 50 years, and they were still considered newcomers by most alien species. At the airlock stood his small team: Dr. Tom Fisher, the xenobiologist; Lisa Jones, the diplomat; and Ben Williams, head of security. All wore the blue and white uniform of the Earth Alliance. "Remember," Mark said quietly, "we show respect, but not fear. The Vexteri value strength above all else." The airlock cycled open, revealing 3 tall Vexteri waiting on the other side. Their bodies were covered in plates that shimmered with blue and green colors. Their 4 arms were held in what Mark had been told was a formal greeting stance. The one in the center stepped forward. "I am High Commander Drell of the Vexteri Dominion. You are the humans we have heard about." The translator in Mark's ear converted the clicking sounds into words he could understand. "Yes, High Commander. I am Captain Mark Reed of the Earth Alliance. We come in peace and friendship." Drell's head tilted to one side, his large compound eyes reflecting Mark's image back at him. "Peace is for those who have proven their worth. Friendship must be earned. Follow us to the meeting chamber." The humans were led through wide corridors where other Vexteri stopped to stare at them. Mark noticed that all of the aliens wore small vials attached to their belts. Poison, he guessed, always ready to use. The meeting chamber was a large round room with a table in the center. Along the walls stood display cases filled with containers of different colored liquids. Each container was labeled in the Vexteri language. "These are our greatest achievements," Drell said, noticing Mark's interest. "The poisons that won us 3 wars and 8 planets. No species has ever survived our strongest toxins." Mark nodded politely. "Impressive. On Earth, we focused more on medicine than poisons." "A strange choice," replied Drell. "How do you defeat your enemies?" "We try to make friends instead of enemies when possible," Mark said. "But we can fight when needed." Drell made a sound that the translator didn't catch. The other Vexteri in the room seemed to react to it, perhaps laughter. "Sit," Drell commanded, pointing to chairs around the table. "Let us speak of why you have come to our territory." As they sat down, one of the Vexteri placed cups in front of each person. A dark liquid was poured into each cup. "This is simply water," Drell explained, "though we could easily have poisoned it." He picked up his cup and drank, showing it was safe. Mark took a small sip, aware that this was the first test. "Show no fear. Let us be direct," Drell continued after everyone had drunk. "Your species is new to space. You have no poisons, no real weapons we consider worthy. Why should we allow you to exist near our borders?" Mark met the alien's gaze steadily. "Because we offer something different. Knowledge, trade, friendship, and because humans have our own strengths that might surprise you." Drell leaned forward. "I enjoyed surprises, human. They are rare in our experience. Perhaps you will provide one." What Mark didn't mention was Earth's secret advantage. Humans had evolved on a planet with thousands of natural toxins. Their bodies had developed remarkable abilities to process and survive poisons. And Mark himself had been chosen for this mission for a special reason. He carried a rare genetic mutation that made him even more resistant to toxins than other humans. He would need this advantage soon. much sooner than he expected. 3 days passed as Mark and his team stayed aboard the Vexteri space station. Each day brought new meetings and careful talks about trade, borders, and possible friendship between our peoples. But Mark noticed how the Vexteri guards watched them with what seemed like doubt in their compound eyes. On the 4th morning, Commander Drell invited Mark alone to his private chambers. The room was small but filled with strange plants that grew in glowing containers. Some had sharp thorns, others had leaves that dripped with colored liquids. "These are rare poison plants from all over our empire," Drell explained, walking between the containers. "Each one can kill in different ways. This one stops the heart. This one freezes the blood. This one makes the victim feel like they are burning alive." Mark kept his face calm. "They are very interesting. On Earth, we study plants for medicine instead of poison." Drell made that sound again, the one the translator couldn't catch. "Medicine is just poison used the right way, Captain Reed. The line between healing and killing is very thin." The Vexteri commander stopped at a black plant with silver spots on its leaves. "This is my favorite. We call it the Night Whisper. Its poison is the strongest we have ever made." He carefully cut a small piece of the leaf, which leaked a dark liquid. "Captain Reed, my people do not understand yours. You have no poison weapons, yet you travel through space meeting new species. This seems foolish to us." Mark smiled politely. "Different cultures, different ways." "Yes, but there is one thing all cultures understand: a test of strength." Drell placed the leaf piece in a small machine that hummed briefly. A moment later, it produced a tiny vial of black liquid. "For 10,000 years, the Vexteri have tested new species we meet. We offer them our strongest poison. If they survive, we respect them as equals. None have passed this test." Mark felt a cold feeling in his stomach. "And if they fail? Then they are weak, and the weak have no place in space." Drell's voice was flat. "Your species wants to be our neighbor. You ask for trust and trade. But why should we respect a species that has not proven itself?" Mark understood now. This wasn't just a diplomatic meeting. It was a test of humanity's right to exist in Vexteri eyes. "What exactly are you asking, Commander?" Drell held up the vial of black liquid, 1 drop of Night Whisper poison. "If you survive, humans will be respected by all Vexteri. If not..." He left the sentence unfinished. Mark thought quickly. Refusing would mean failure in Vexteri eyes. It could lead to war. His team had warned him this might happen. The Vexteri were known to test other species with their poisons. That's why he had been chosen for this mission. Back on Earth, tests had shown that Mark's unique biology could process toxins better than any human in recorded history. The scientists had called it a genetic gift. His liver produced enzymes that could break down almost any poison. Even so, this would be dangerous. "If I take this test, you promise peace between our peoples if I survive." Drell's 4 hands made a complex pattern. "By the old laws, yes. No Vexteri would question it." Mark took a deep breath. "Then I accept your challenge." Drell seemed surprised. "You should know, Captain Reed, that the longest any being has survived Night Whisper is 6 hours. Death is not pleasant." "I understand." Mark held out his hand. Drell carefully handed him the vial. "The test begins now. You must drink it all." The liquid looked like oil, with tiny silver flecks floating in it. Mark knew his team would be furious. He was supposed to consult them before making any big decisions, but sometimes a leader had to act alone. He opened the vial, looked directly into Drell's compound eyes, and drank the poison in 1 swallow. It tasted like metal and fire. The last thing Mark saw before he fell to the floor was Drell calling for guards on his communicator. The last thing he heard was the Vexteri commander saying, "Take him to the watching room. The death process has begun." Mark woke in a strange room. His body felt heavy, as if someone had replaced his blood with lead. Through blurry eyes, he saw he was lying on a flat metal table. The walls around him were clear glass, and beyond them stood several Vexteri watching him. He recognized Drell among them, along with what looked like scientists in different colored uniforms. Pain hit him like a hammer. Every muscle in his body cramped at once. Mark bit down on his lip to stop from screaming. He would not give them the satisfaction. "The human is awake," said one of the scientist Vexteri, voice coming through speakers in the room. "This is unusual. Most species are unconscious until death." Drell stepped closer to the glass. "Can you hear me, Captain Reed? You have survived the first hour. This is unexpected." Mark tried to speak, but his throat burned. He managed only a nod. "Your team has been informed of your choice," Drell continued. "They are quite angry. Your Dr. Fisher demanded to see you, but our laws forbid interference with the test." Another wave of pain washed over Mark. This time it felt like his skin was on fire. His back arched off the table, but he kept his mouth closed tight. The poison was attacking every part of his body now. He could feel it burning through his veins, reaching for his heart and brain. What the Vexteri couldn't see was the battle happening inside him. Mark's special biology was fighting back. His liver was working harder than it ever had, breaking down the poison molecule by molecule. His immune system, stronger than normal human standards, was identifying the toxin as an invader and learning how to neutralize it. But the Night Whisper was powerful. It changed and adapted, finding new ways to attack his body. Mark felt his lungs struggling to pull in air. His heart beat in strange, uneven patterns. 2 hours, announced one of the scientists. Heart rate unstable but continuing. Breathing labored but present. Blood samples show toxin levels still high. Mark closed his eyes and focused on his breathing. Slow and steady. His grandfather, a survival expert, had taught him that the mind could control the body if you believed strongly enough. "Pain is just a message," his grandfather used to say. "You can choose to read it or set it aside." He set the pain aside and focused on staying alive. Time passed in waves of agony. Sometimes Mark drifted into darkness. Sometimes he woke to find new Vexteri scientists staring at him through the glass, taking notes and looking confused. During one moment of clarity, he noticed Drell speaking with what looked like important Vexteri officials. They were gesturing at him and clicking their mandibles rapidly. An argument, perhaps. 4 hours, said the voice over the speaker. The human still lives. This defies all previous data. Mark managed to turn his head. He made eye contact with Drell, and with great effort, raised one hand in a weak thumbs-up gesture. He couldn't be sure, but he thought he saw the commander's head tilt in what might have been respect. Inside Mark's body, the battle was turning. His special enzymes had identified patterns in the poison structure. His liver was breaking it down faster now. The pain was still terrible, but Mark could feel something new. The first hints of his body gaining control. At the 5-hour mark, Mark did something that shocked the watching Vexteri. He pushed himself up to a sitting position on the table. His arms shook with the effort, and sweat poured down his face, but he stayed upright. "Impossible," whispered one of the scientists, the word clear through the speakers. Drell stepped right up to the glass. "Captain Reed," he said, his voice different now. "You have survived longer than any being ever exposed to Night Whisper. How is this possible?" Mark's voice came out as a rasp. "Humans are full of surprises." Then he smiled through his pain, a deliberate show of strength that sent the watching Vexteri into a frenzy of clicking and gesturing. The poison still burned in his veins, but Mark knew something the Vexteri didn't. He was going to survive. His body was winning. And when this was over, everything between humans and Vexteri would change forever. By the 6th hour, the observation room around Mark's glass chamber had filled with Vexteri of all ranks. Word had spread through the station that a human was doing the impossible, surviving the Night Whisper poison. Some came wearing ornate armor with colored markings that Mark guessed showed high status. Others wore simple uniforms. All watched him with their compound eyes, mandibles clicking in what seemed like excitement or disbelief. Mark still felt terrible. His vision blurred in and out, his stomach twisted with pain. But he could tell the worst had passed. Each breath came a little easier than the last. His heartbeat, which had raced and stuttered for hours, was finding its normal rhythm again. A door opened, and Mark's team rushed in, led by Dr. Fisher. They had finally been allowed to see him. "Mark, can you hear me?" Dr. Fisher pressed against the glass, his face showing both worry and amazement. Mark managed a weak smile. "I'm still here, Tom." Lisa Jones, the diplomat, turned angrily to Drell. "This test was not part of our agreement. You could have killed him." Drell's 4 arms moved in a pattern that the humans couldn't read. "Yet he lives. No species has ever survived past the 5th hour. Your captain has now reached the 6th. This changes everything." Then Williams, the security chief, stood protectively near the glass. "What happens now? Is the test over?" "The test ends when death comes, or when the poison is defeated," Drell explained. "Based on all our knowledge, death should have come hours ago." Dr. Fisher had taken out a small scanner and was pointing it at Mark through the glass. "His vital signs are stabilizing. The poison concentration in his bloodstream is decreasing. His body is actually breaking it down." The high-ranking Vexteri in the room buzzed with conversation. One stepped forward, wearing a robe with glowing patterns. Mark guessed this was someone important. "I am Elder Tix, head of the Poison Council," the Vexteri announced. "In 10,000 years, we have tested hundreds of species. None have survived Night Whisper. How is this human doing it?" Dr. Fisher looked at Mark, silently asking permission to explain. Mark nodded weakly. "Humans evolved on a planet with thousands of natural toxins," Dr. Fisher began. "Our bodies developed ways to process poisons. Captain Reed has a rare genetic variation that makes him even more resistant than most humans." Elder Tix moved closer to the glass. "You knew this would happen." "We hoped," Dr. Fisher admitted. "We didn't know for sure." Mark watched as the Vexteri leaders gathered in a corner, speaking quickly in their own language. The translator couldn't keep up with their rapid clicks and hisses. After several minutes, Drell approached the glass again. "The council has made a decision," Drell announced. "The test will continue, but we will provide basic sustenance. Water, at least." A small panel opened in the wall of Mark's chamber, and a container of water slid through. Mark reached for it with shaking hands and drank deeply. The cool liquid soothed his burning throat. By the 8th hour, Mark was able to stand briefly. The watching Vexteri made sounds of surprise. By the 10th hour, he could walk slowly around the small chamber. The pain had faded to a dull ache throughout his body. Dr. Fisher's scanner showed what was happening. The poison is now less than 30% of its original concentration. His liver is processing it faster than we thought possible. At the 12th hour, Drell called for silence in the observation room. He approached the glass with Elder Tix and 3 other high-ranking Vexteri. "Captain Mark Reed of Earth," Drell said formally, "you have survived our strongest poison for 12 hours. The council has unanimously agreed. This test is concluded." The glass walls of the chamber slowly lowered into the floor. Mark stood unsteadily, facing the Vexteri leaders. Elder Tix stepped forward and extended all 4 hands in a new gesture. "In all our history, no being has done what you have done today. By our oldest laws, you have earned our highest respect." Mark looked at the Vexteri leader, then at his own team, who watched with proud smiles. In just 12 hours, everything had changed. He had turned poison into possibility, and a potential war into what might become peace. "I'm glad to hear that," Mark said simply. "Now, can we talk about that friendship between our peoples?" News of Mark's survival spread through the Vexteri station like wildfire. As he rested in his quarters the next day, recovering from his ordeal, Vexteri officials and scientists requested meetings one after another. His team had to turn most away, insisting their captain needed time to heal. You've become something of a celebrity, Lisa told him as she brought him a tray of food. The Vexteri are calling you Poison Breaker in their language. Mark sat up in his bed, still feeling weak, but much better than before. What's happening with the negotiations? Everything has changed, Lisa said, smiling. They're actually listening now. Really listening. Elder Tix has ordered full diplomatic recognition of humanity. Dr. Fisher entered the room, carrying his medical scanner. How's our hero feeling today? Like I drank poison yesterday, Mark said with a weak laugh. But I'll live. Dr. Fisher ran the scanner over Mark's body. Amazing. Your system has processed nearly all the toxin. There's just a trace amount left, which should be gone by tomorrow. Your liver function is already returning to normal. A chime at the door interrupted them. Ben Williams, the security chief, stepped in. Commander Drell is here. He insists on seeing you. Mark nodded. Let him in. Drell entered the room alone. Without his guards, he seemed less intimidating. The Vexteri commander stood awkwardly for a moment, as if unsure of the proper protocol. Captain Reed, he finally said, I have come to personally check on your recovery. I'm doing well, thank you, Mark replied. The scientists are confused, Drell admitted. They have been studying your blood samples. They cannot understand how you survived. Dr. Fisher stepped forward. Perhaps our peoples have much to learn from each other. Drell's mandibles clicked softly. Yes, this is why I have come. The High Council has met through the night. They have decided to offer humans something no other species has been granted. The room fell silent as everyone waited for Drell to continue. We wish to propose a knowledge exchange. Our poison masters will share some of their secrets, and in return, we wish to learn about human biology and medicine. Mark exchanged surprised glances with his team. This was far more than they had hoped for. That sounds like an excellent beginning, Mark said carefully. There is more, Drell continued. The Council wishes you to address all station leaders tomorrow. Your survival has caused questions among our people. Questions, Mark asked. For 10,000 years, we have believed that survival against our poisons was the ultimate test of worthiness. We have eliminated species who failed this test. Drell's voice grew quieter. Now we must face the possibility that we have been wrong. The implications hung heavy in the air. The Vexteri were questioning their entire way of life because of what Mark had done. I would be honored to speak to your leaders, Mark said. After Drell left, Lisa turned to Mark with wide eyes. Do you realize what just happened? They're reconsidering their entire approach to other species because of you. Mark nodded slowly. And that means we have a responsibility. We need to show them a better way forward. The next day, though still weak, Mark stood before the assembled Vexteri leadership in their Grand Council chamber. Hundreds of the insect-like aliens filled the room, their compound eyes all focused on the human before them. Yesterday, I survived what you call the Night Whisper, Mark began. I did this not because humans are superior, but because we are different. Each species evolves to meet the challenges of their homeworld. Humans faced many poisons on Earth and developed ways to survive them. He paused, looking at the silent crowd. But the true strength of any species isn't in survival alone. It's in what we do after we survive. Humans have learned that cooperation often brings greater rewards than competition. Working together, different species can achieve more than any could alone. Elder Tix stepped forward. What would you propose, Poison Breaker? Mark smiled at the title. Let us begin by sharing knowledge, not as enemies or competitors, but as potential allies. The galaxy is vast and often dangerous. Together, we might face its challenges better than apart. The chamber filled with the clicking sound of Vexteri discussion. Then, one by one, the leaders raised their upper limbs in what Mark had learned was their gesture of agreement. A new chapter had begun, not just for humans and Vexteri, but perhaps for all species in this part of the galaxy. 1 month after the poison test, the space station had transformed. What had once been a purely Vexteri military outpost now housed the first joint human-Vexteri research center. Scientists from both species worked side by side in newly built laboratories. Mark walked through the main lab, watching as Dr. Fisher and 3 Vexteri scientists examined samples under complex scanning equipment. The sight still amazed him. Humans and Vexteri working together, sharing knowledge that both sides had once kept secret. "Captain," called Dr. Fisher, waving him over. "You need to see this." Mark joined the group at the large display screen. "What have you found?" "The Vexteri poison masters have been analyzing your blood samples from the test," Dr. Fisher explained. "Show him, Master Krill." The lead Vexteri scientist clicked a few commands into the console. The screen showed magnified images of blood cells and strange molecules moving around them. "We have discovered why you survived," Master Krill said. His voice had the typical clicking sound of all Vexteri, but Mark had grown used to it. "Your blood contains special proteins that bind to toxins. We have never seen this before." Another Vexteri scientist added, "These proteins exist in all humans, but yours are stronger. They captured the night whisper molecules until your liver could process them." "And now for the exciting part," Dr. Fisher said, barely containing his enthusiasm. "We believe we can use this knowledge to create new medicines, treatments that could save lives across many species." Mark nodded, impressed. "So my survival might help others survive too." "Exactly," Master Krill confirmed. "We have always used our knowledge to create better poisons. Now we are learning to use the same knowledge for healing. It is a new way of thinking for us." The door slid open, and Lisa entered with Elder Tix. Both looked pleased. "The treaty is finalized," Lisa announced. "The Earth Alliance Council has approved it, and the Vexteri High Command has added their seal." Elder Tix's mandibles clicked in what Mark now recognized as their version of satisfaction. "For the first time in our history, we have formed a true alliance with another species, not based on fear or power, but on mutual respect." "And there's more," Lisa added. 3 other species from nearby systems have requested to join our research efforts. Species that have avoided the Vexteri for centuries are now reaching out. Elder Tix turned to Mark. "They have heard the story of the poison breaker. It has spread faster than we expected." Mark felt a mixture of pride and humility. "I just did what I had to do. The real heroes are the scientists making something positive from it." Later that evening, Mark stood at the viewing window of his quarters, looking out at the stars. Drell joined him there, something that would have been unthinkable just a month ago. "Your people have changed us," Drell said quietly. "For 10,000 years, we believed strength came from creating the deadliest poisons. We judged worth by survival alone." "And now?" Mark asked. "Now we see there is strength in healing too, in building instead of destroying." Drell turned to face Mark. "Some of our traditionalists resist this change. They say we are becoming weak." "Change is never easy," Mark replied. "On Earth, we have a saying, the strongest trees bend in the wind rather than break." Drell considered this, an interesting concept. Flexibility as strength. A small alert sounded from Drell's communication device. He checked it, and his posture straightened. "The first shipment of medical supplies has been prepared for the outer colonies," he announced. "Using what we've learned from your biology, we've created treatments for diseases that have plagued border worlds for generations." Mark smiled. "That's the real victory. Not that I survived your poison, but what we're doing because of it." Drell extended 2 of his 4 hands in the formal Vexteri gesture of respect. "You have taught us that true strength lies not in the ability to kill, but in the choice to heal instead." As Mark returned the gesture, he thought about how close their peoples had come to conflict. One small choice, his decision to take the poison test, had changed everything. Sometimes the greatest battles weren't fought with weapons, but with courage and the willingness to trust. 1 year after the poison test, the Vexteri homeworld hosted a gathering unlike any in its history. Representatives from 20 different species filled the Grand Hall of the High Council building. Some were old enemies of the Vextari. Others were longtime trading partners. All had come because of what had started with one human surviving a poison no one was meant to survive. Mark stood on the speaker's platform, looking out at the diverse crowd. Beings with tentacles, wings, exoskeletons, and every imaginable body type sat together in a hall that once admitted only Vextari. At his side stood Drell, now appointed as ambassador to Earth, and Elder Tix, who had become the strongest voice for change in Vextari society. 1 year ago, Mark began, his voice carrying through the translator devices everyone wore. I drank a poison that was supposed to kill me. Today, we celebrate not my survival, but what that survival has taught us all. The crowd was silent, listening intently. The night whisper poison that nearly took my life has now saved millions of others. The research we've done together has created medicines for diseases across 17 worlds. Sicknesses that once had no cure can now be treated. On the large screen behind him, images appeared showing hospitals where the new treatments were being used. Children of various species played who would have died without the new medicines. This is the true power of cooperation, Mark continued. When the Vextari shared their knowledge of poisons, and humans shared our understanding of how to fight them, we created something neither could have made alone. Elder Tix stepped forward. For 10,000 years, my people judged others by their ability to withstand our poisons. We believed this made us strong. We were wrong. The elder's words caused a stir among the Vextari in the crowd. Such an admission would have been unthinkable before. True strength, Tix continued, comes from growth and adaptation, from learning new ways. The human, Mark Reed, showed us that survival can lead to more than just continuing to exist. It can lead to thriving together. Drell moved to the center of the platform. Today, we announced the formation of the Galactic Health Coalition. 20 species have joined so far, pledging to share medical knowledge and resources. What began as a poison test has become the largest cooperative effort in this sector of space. Mark watched as the crowd rose in what each species considered a sign of respect. Some raising tentacles, others spreading wing membranes, others stomping feet or blinking light patterns. The Vextari clicked their mandibles in their traditional salute. After the ceremony, Mark found a quiet corner in the reception hall. Dr. Fisher joined him, carrying 2 drinks. Quite a change from a year ago, Tom said, handing Mark a glass. Remember when we first docked here? I was certain we were heading into a war. Mark nodded. Instead, we found something better. The Vextari needed to be challenged. They'd become too certain of their superiority. And you nearly died proving them wrong. Tom replied with a serious look. The medical team says your liver will never be quite the same, you know. Mark smiled. A small price to pay for peace. Across the room, a group of young Vextari approached. They were students based on their simple uniforms. They stopped respectfully before Mark. Poison Breaker, one said hesitantly, we are studying new medical science at the Academy. Because of you, our class is the first to learn healing instead of poison making. May we ask you questions? Mark gestured for them to join him. As the young Vextari gathered around, eagerly asking about Earth and human biology, Mark felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The pain of the poison test was just a memory now, but its effects would continue long after he was gone. On a nearby balcony, Elder Tix and Drell watched the scene. One human changed everything, Tix said quietly. Our historians are still trying to understand how it happened so quickly. Drell's compound eyes reflected the lights of the celebration. Perhaps it was not just that he survived our poison, but how he used that survival. Not for power or advantage, but for the benefit of all. A lesson we needed to learn, Tix agreed. After 10,000 years of testing others, we were finally tested ourselves. Below them, laughter rang out as Mark told the young Vextari students about Earth. A new generation was growing up with different ideas about strength and power, and it had all begun with a simple truth. Sometimes the greatest victories come not from defeating enemies, but from turning them into friends.